In this exercise, we're going to be discussing the different file types Inventor uses. Inventor uses several different file types to maintain relationships between the different parts and assemblies to keep everything straight. So if we look here on the screen, we have an assembly file, we have a standard solid part file, we have a sheet metal part file, we have an IPN or presentation view, and we have a IDW, which is a drawing view, just like the DWG drawing view. So we have several different files to work from. If we take a look at new, we can see all of these files, and this is the easiest place to explain their relationships. We have parts. You take multiple part files to make up an assembly. Those assembly files can have drawings, and so can those part files. And you could take the assembly and create an IPN or an exploded view to show how something should go together. It's also good for doing bills of material. I come over here and I look at this one. You can see I did an exploded view with a parts list or bill of material and ballooning. So you can see how that goes together and what part is what. It gives you a really good understanding. Out of the box, the default templates, we have the standard English templates. These are basically an ANSI standard or imperial templates. If we go over to the metric templates, you can see that you can load as many styles as you want in Inventor. There's like 12 or 14 different default styles. We have ANSI, we have DIN, we have BSI, GB, so if you do any Chinese stuff, ISO, JIS for Japanese stuff. We have all of these different standards. And then you come down through here and you could see, depending on what work you're doing, you have those. In my Inventor, I have mold design loaded in my machine. And then mine is from a factory design suite. So I have some factory design options in here as well. If you have yours from product design suite or standard Inventor suite, you may not have all of these. Great thing about Inventor is where these templates are located. If I tab over here to just standard file explorer, you can see here's my templates. So I can say new folder, infinite skills. And as soon as I do that, you can see it shows up here in my list. So if you want to have your own company standards, you can just create copies of these files and pre-populate them with your company name, your department name, anything that you want to pre-populate into these files, you can create that and drop it into your company file. So let's take a look at our files and kind of how they work here. So usually you start out with a part file. Part file is pretty straightforward. It's made up of different features. You'll notice when you're working in the part file, Inventor lets you select different features and faces. We'll talk about selection later on, how you can adjust this. But you can see that it understands that you're in this part environment. If you are working in a sheet metal environment, you open up the sheet metal part, allows you to do things like go to flat pattern and do things such as flanges and bends and anything sheet metal related. This is where I came from, the sheet metal industry. And let me tell you, it's very powerful. It does as much as anything out there can do. Don't let anybody tell you that it can't. And it's an amazing product for sheet metal design. I really enjoy doing sheet metal design in Inventor. Beats the heck out of the old hand calculations we had to do back in AutoCAD. If you need to convert it back over to a solid model, you can go up here to 3D model, convert back over. If you drew a sheet metal part out as a solid by mistake, you can come over here and say convert to sheet metal. It's very easy to go back and forth between these different environments. You make up multiple parts, come in here to this assembly. You can see as I hover around the different parts in the assembly, it automatically highlights those and tells me, hey, that I'm in an assembly environment. You don't really care about the individual features. So when you are editing a feature in Inventor, you're at the part level. So think about it just like you would work on a real manufactured part. If I manufacture this, I'm not going to be machining out these holes after I put it together. I'm going to do it once it's all together. Now, if there is something that you hand drill, like a self-tapping screw you put in after the fact, so you don't want the laser or plasma or mold or whatever to put a hole in there, you can come up here and do a hole in the assembly environment. What that means is it does not go back to the part environment. So Inventor works just like you're going to manufacture something. So think of it that way. If I put something in after it's fully assembled, then that's where I need to put it. I need to put it in the assembly because that hole does not need to exist. Now, if you just need it for reference, if you just want to see where another hole is in another part, you still do that at the part level. You can double click on the part and come over here and see the different pieces. Or if I come over here, back to my assembly here, I can edit a part in reference to everything else. So we can see here, it's showing me where these holes are based on this other part. So I could project those holes into this part. And I have done that because you see this little marker over here in the browser looks kind of like a recycled marker. That basically is saying, hey, I've projected something in from somewhere else. It's allowed me to bring that information from that other part into this part. When you get done, you hit return and you go back to the assembly environment. We can also have notes in our assembly. So you can see here's the engineer's notebook. This one I copied and pasted in bill of materials. I copied and pasted in a picture. I could actually have engineering notes, calculations about that part. So you could save that information in here so you can remember what happened. And you can see that there's a lot of information in here. And so Inventor likes to break it up into these individual files. No file is more important than the other, but that relationship is important to Inventor. So you want to make sure you don't move these files out of the project file. Everything has to reside under that project file. And if you do lose a component, you will notice the browser will give you some kind of little funky thing basically saying, hey, I can't find that component, and it wants you to go find it. So next we can look at the drawings. And you can see in the drawing here, we have a parts list and it shows a presentation view. And a presentation view is nothing more than an exploded view. This is really good to show how things go together or things like parts list. I have one customer that builds custom cabinets, like the really architectural, funky looking things. And what he does is he uses a presentation view and automates it so that you have a little video that he emails out to his installer that shows them what order to put things together. So there are certain things that you have to put in before other things sometimes don't make sense, but you have to do it because that's the way it was designed. So you can actually create a little video of this going together and show somebody how it's supposed to look. And then you end up with a AVI file or movie file that you can email out to somebody. The other option in our drawing file is to create, a 3-view where you get sections and dimensions. And you get all this prettiness that Inventor can create. Like I said before, you can either use the DWG or IDW. Where this came from was Inventor originally only had the IDW because the DWG couldn't handle everything. But now the DWG can handle everything the IDW can. I like to use the IDW for my Inventor work just because it keeps it separate for me. I don't accidentally open it up in AutoCAD or something like that. But if you prefer to only use DWGs, it's your preference. Sometimes it just makes it a little bit cleaner if you have 2 separate files, just so you don't accidentally mix them up. It's not the end of the world if you do open an Inventor file in AutoCAD. But sometimes I do like to keep them separate just to make things easier. So you can see there's a lot of information there in a lot of different files. So take a look at the different files. Double click on a lot of objects inside of a file to see what the relationship is and see if you can kind of follow it down the rabbit hole, so to speak, and see what you can figure out with Inventor and see how powerful these file types are. And we'll go into more detail in further lessons.